This is 𝗕cie𝗂𝘁, podcast for the people.
Well, hello, Croy. Welcome to the Born or Made podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I always kind of start off light here. So I'd like to know, where are we talking to you from? What part of the world?
At the moment, I am in Connecticut in the United States, but I also live in South America in Colombia.
Colombia, really? So Connecticut, you're getting a little chilly up there. We got a cold front coming. I live in Virginia, so we got a cold front coming this week.
Would you believe it's 75 today?
So, wow, that's going to be hotter than it was in Virginia. I'm not there now, but wow, that's got to be like unseasonably, like what, 20 degrees?
It's probably like 30, 35 degrees warmer than normal.
Wow. Wow. So, okay, so we'll go down Colombia in a little bit. So you live in Connecticut, but where were you born?
I was born in New York, just outside of New York City.
Okay, so kind of out in the country then, not in the big not in the big city then.
Back then, that was the country, but now everything is just amazing. Huge buildings everywhere.
So you're born just outside of New York City, and then so take me kind of, where'd you start there? You were grade school. Did you stay in that same area through high school, or did you kind of move around?
No, I stayed there the whole time. I grew up there and I stayed there for a long time. I had a contracting business there. I was a carpenter for many years because my dad was a carpenter. My brothers were carpenters. My uncles were carpenters. So of course I became a carpenter. And so I hung out there for a long time until I moved over the border into Connecticut, which is just a stone throw away.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Not far at all. Wow. No kidding. So you were in carpentry for a while. So I build roof trusses and floor trusses for a living. So that's my primary business. So you've probably set a few of those in your life. But no, that's cool. So you get through that. So great childhood, did all the framing. So how long were you did you do contracting?
I started I started working for my dad when I was still a young teen. Yeah, and then I did that until I was 35. So that was over 20 years in the business before I finally was like, is this what I really want to do for the rest of my life? And the answer was a pretty overwhelming, no, I don't want to do this. And the reason was that because my dad at that time, mid 50s, and his friends and buddies, everybody he worked with, they were all beat up already. And they looked way older than they were. And none of them had any money. And so it's like, is that really what I want? Work all my life and then to end up, beat up and broke? And it's like, no, that's not what I want. And so I started looking for new things. And I had, by chance, I had gone to a seminar. I had never known there was even a thing called seminar. My dad was a pastor. And so he was on stage, and I saw politicians on stage on TV, but that was all I knew. And so I went to this event, and there was all these different guys, one selling a real estate program, another one selling stock market, all these different things. But a motivational guy came on, and I was like, that is what I want to do.
No kidding. And so you're 35 and you just kind of pivot?
I was starting to pivot before that, but 35 is when the big pivot changed, and it was the next few years that was the transition. And there was a lot of really tight years in that transition. But it was a total change from going super blue collar to, what you might call an intellectual career. And it was just so far out of the norm for my family because we're all blue collar as you get.
No kidding. And you were still right there in that general area, though. You'd never left that area.
Not until I moved to Colombia.
No kidding. So,
which was about 7 years ago now.
So do you live there 6 months out of the year in Colombia and then the other in US, or what is the transition?
Yeah, more or less. I go back and forth, and it's about 6 months and 6 months.
And why Colombia?
When I went through a transition in life and wanted to try something different, I started traveling. First, it started in the US. And then I had an invite to go to Costa Rica. So I jumped on a plane and went to Costa Rica, and that started my traveling. And I fell in love with it. I lived in Asia for a while. I lived in Mexico, Costa Rica, and eventually I found Colombia, and I fell in love with the city and the country and the people. And that's why I keep going back.
And so with your job now, that allows you to be in either place. It doesn't really have an impact on your.
As long as I got Wi-Fi on my laptop and my phone, that's all I need.
No kidding. Yeah, and I'm assuming they've got all that down there as far as high speed. I mean, most of these countries are farther ahead than us, and some of that.
As long as you're in a city, yes. If you're outside of the city, it can be, the Wi-Fi can be dodgy.
So they've not been able to get Starlink down there yet?
as far
There
as
is a
like
Starlink. I think Starlink's everywhere in the world, but you have
Yeah, it is.
inexpensive Wi-Fi or internet most everywhere you go.
Really? And is it public internet or is it just kind of everybody you're getting off somebody else's?
No, you just like in the US, it works
Okay,
basically the same thing.
Okay,
The
same
cell
thing.
phones work the same. The technology is the same. The medical system is every bit as good as ours, if not better. And they have their problems just like we do. So it's another place. The one thing I love about Colombia, though, specifically the Colombian people, I mean, the weather's amazing. The city is amazing. It's semi-tropical. It's 80 degrees every single day of the year. That's all great. But what keeps me going back are the people, because they're like what we used to be back, say, in the 70s and the early 80s, where everybody was social and friendly and family oriented, community oriented. They still have that. And so you could walk down the street and if you're lost, they'll walk you to where you got to go if it's within reason. I mean, they're just super friendly, happy people.
You know, it's funny you bring that up because something I noticed the other day, I go into Lowe's, I'm trying to find 2 items, and I started paying attention that nobody talks to each other. Like we all walk down these aisles. I go up and ask somebody where WD-40 is, right? You'd think in a hardware store, that'd be probably the top 20 items as an employee you'd know. Let me look. She gets on her phone, tries to locate it, and then tells me, yeah, I think it's on 14A on the left down there. I'm like, okay. And I walk through the entire store. I check out at a self-checkout kiosk. I never spoke to a single person. And I thought, this is not healthy.
We've changed a lot since when we grew up. It's a very different world now. The technology has changed everything. The atmosphere, the culture has changed. We've become very individualistic, and I get that. There's a lot of times where I don't want to talk to anybody for days or even weeks at a time.
Right.
But inherently, I'm a very social person. And so I need that. I need both. So I'm kind of like an ambivert, I guess you'd call it, where I need to be introverted, I need to be extroverted. And it just depends. But as a culture, we've become very individualistic. And that's really good in a lot of ways. But as a society as a whole, it's very bad. And
you got to come together. You better know how to be together.
The last time we've been together as a country, like truly together, was 9/11.
9/11. And boy, what a short memory.
And that's community didn't last very long after that.
No, I was working I was in construction then, and I was a volunteer at a church, and I'll never forget the amount of people that came to church that next week was like double, and it stayed like that. And then about 6 months in, it started curving off, and within about 2 years, it was back to where it used to be. And I always remember that. That's the community. We all came together. Nobody cared what you did for a living. Nobody cared what your politics were. And then we lost it real fast.
We never talk about politics like we do now.
No, man, I don't even know what political genre my grandfather or my grandmother or uncles ever were. Like, I still don't. Now, they're all passed away, but I mean, they were farmers, so most likely they were Democrats. I never knew that. Like, I didn't know. I was like, nobody cared. Nobody even talked about it.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So sorry to get off track there. So you're 35-ish and you go to your first seminar and you're thinking, this is what I want to do. Tell me where we go from there.
I had been looking for something for a while. I just didn't know what. And when I saw it was Tony Robbins on stage, when I saw him on stage, and I had no idea who he was up until that point. And
really?
I had no idea.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I knew personal development. I knew books and
sure.
stuff like that, but I don't know, maybe I read his book or something, but that was the first time I saw him in person. And it was like, that's the coolest thing ever. But I wasn't a speaker. I had no idea how to do this, and I wasn't an author at that time. And so I had to learn all these things. I had to learn how to speak in front of an audience. I had to learn how to write a book. I had to learn how to publish and then market the book, which is a whole different topic compared to writing. And so that was a lot of years of trying to figure that out. And to some extent, I'm still dialing that in. And right now I'm in the middle of transitioning that a little bit to create a business that I like even more. Because I find now lately I've been doing too many of the things I don't like. And so it's like, okay, I've been doing this too long. I need to figure out, how do I change this just a little bit so I do more of what I love, do less of what I don't, and or outsource what I don't like.
So go back through. So you do this again, and then you're going to write a book. So what was your first book about?
My first book was actually on nutrition. Was I was into fitness as a younger guy, and it was like, well, this is the only thing I knew other than carpentry, construction and carpentry, and I was really
Yeah,
good at
carpentry
working on
doesn't
it.
sell a lot of books.
I'm sorry?
Carpentry probably wouldn't sell a lot of books.
No, not like other topics, but my first book didn't sell hardly anything. I mean, I might have sold a
Yeah.
couple dozen, but that was about it. And it was an absolute, economically, it was an absolute failure. But that led to other things that led to eventually speaking on the bigger stages and led to my next book. And then there's been a few since then. But it was in that whole journey, I was also asking myself, what would you do if you knew you would succeed? Failure was impossible. What would you do? And I was asking myself that over and over, kind of like years before I asked, what would I do if it wasn't construction? It's like, well, now what would I do? And then I had watched a video of a guy who ran across America. And I'm like, that is the coolest freaking thing I've ever heard in my entire life, but I wasn't a runner. So with 1 year of training, I trained to run from California to New York, a marathon a day, 26 miles a day for 100 consecutive days. Never a break, never a day off, just every day it was a marathon. And then after I had this idea, I was like, well, how do I make this more than just about the run? And that's where the idea of came from of, why don't I combine my public speaking desires and trying to turn that into a career? Why don't I speak every day as well? So every morning I'd speak to a different audience, and then I'd run a marathon every afternoon, and I'd repeat it over and over and over for 100 days.
Okay, we're going to take a real quick break on that note. Okay, so now we're back to the Born or Made podcast. And so tell me about, so you spoke every morning and then you ran a marathon that day. I mean, because it's taken you, are you running 4-hour marathons, 5 hours? Did you start at 3 and ended up at 7? I mean, walk me through. I mean, that's a brutal beat down on your body.
Well, you're a marathoner, so you get that. And it actually was the opposite for me. I started off slow and I got faster and faster as the journey went on.
It's probably because you were so skinny.
Well, I did lose some weight.
Yeah.
I lost about, I don't know, I think it was around 20 pounds or so at that point. And that was my dip. And I knew I was losing weight. And so I was like, I got to do something to gain calories again. Cause I was getting really thin and it wasn't a very attractive look.
Yeah.
And so I started drinking milkshakes everywhere when I was running. Every time I saw a McDonald's, a Burger King, a Carvel, or anything like that, I would buy a milkshake and I would eat the milk. I would drink the milkshake as I was running. And those were that was my extra calories to put the weight back on. So I actually
So
gained
healthy.
weight in the last 1,000 miles.
Really? I couldn't do that. So I would eat ice cream every night, just try not to lose weight. And I can't imagine doing that while running though.
I can eat anything while I'm running except for pizza or bacon. The tomatoes, the acidic and acid in the tomato sauce bothers my stomach, or the bacon repeats on me terribly. Other than that, you could give me anything. I got a iron stomach.
And I'm sure after doing it 100 days, you probably tried all kinds of stuff.
Oh, and then you get invited to people's houses and they feed you and you're eating all kinds of things that you never expect to eat. And I had no problem with anything.
So you were doing your speaking. So obviously what a great idea, because 100 times in a row, you're going to hone certain skills. So what were you talking about your day before? Were you trying to motivate people on how hard it was, mental toughness? What did you kind of start working towards on your speaking?
It was all sort of revolved around the mental toughness. I didn't call it that back then. Nobody was really calling it back then.
Yeah.
But every morning, every day was as a motivational speech. And this was to groups that were in transition. They were in some sort of hardship. So United Way, homeless shelters, prisons, halfway houses, Hope for the Warriors, addiction shelters, all these different groups that were in challenge. But every day the message was to rise above your circumstances and create a life that you love. And so it was all, and then I told the stories about the mental toughness, how I'm running, and it developed. And the interesting thing was, before I left, my friends who knew me as a speaker then, that we kind of were in the same circles. And then when I finished, they're like, you're a totally different guy as a speaker. It's like, your speeches are amazing. You were good before. I mean, you were pretty good, but now it's just like, holy cow, you are extraordinary.
No kidding. Well, think about it. I mean, it's pretty ingenious. I mean, I don't agree with you running a marathon every day, but the speaking thing is that's pretty ingenious to have that. And how did you line up all these people? I mean, at some point you started gaining momentum, right? People started wanting you to be there. But I mean, you didn't just show up at these homeless shelters, obviously, did you?
No, it was all, I had a full team that was helping me, to
Okay,
run,
good.
one guy to run across America. There was a total of 14 people behind the scenes. There was 4 people with me, and then everybody else was remote. And the majority of those remote people were working on the publicity and getting me on stage.
Yeah, and just to figure out what hotel you were going to stay in. I didn't even think about all the logistics of all that and food. And I mean, you had to have prepared, you had to have extra pairs of shoes. And I mean, you had to have everything.
The funny thing about the shoes is, because that's the question I get, is how many shoes did you go through?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you.
How much did you eat? And then
Yeah.
why? So those are the 3 questions I always got. The shoes, I had worn out 16 pairs of shoes. And the funny thing about that is that my feet had grown 2 sizes since the start.
For the 100 days?
100 days, it grew 2 sizes. So I had bought all my shoes beforehand. I couldn't use any of them hardly, and I had to keep buying new shoes as we were going through major cities because my feet kept growing so much.
So I wonder, have you researched that? I mean, is that to be expected? I would have never. No, I know that, but I mean, there's been people that have run, but I guess, yeah, duh. I guess that kind of makes sense. But 2 shoe size, like that's not like you just grew a half size. That's a big difference.
And then after I finished the run, my feet went back 1 size, but still today my feet are 1 full size bigger than before I ran across America.
That's so funny. Did they get wider too?
Just what I think happened is because I think my arch is similar to the way it was before. I don't have a big arch, but I still have an arch, and so I think maybe the little bit was that, but I think it's just sort of like what's that swimmer's name? The famous swimmer,
Phelps, Michael Phelps. Yeah.
You know, he's got these oversized lungs for what he does. And I think from the running, like he has his lungs, or Mike Tyson has his punch. I think it was my feet just grew so much to adapt to what I was doing. And so the structure got bigger, the muscles got bigger, the tendons stretched out. So my feet they just literally grew like a bodybuilder's body would.
No kidding. Wow. It'd have been interesting if, now that you know what you know, if you would have did you do any data points on your body other than, I mean, obviously your foot was an obvious one because you just didn't have a choice, but even like, I wonder if your lung capacity increased and maintained a higher level, your heart, being at a slower pace. It'd be interesting, even your neurons in your brain, if they changed because of that.
It's interesting questions. I know for a fact that my lungs got better because by the time I left, from when I left to the time I got there, my daily pace was significantly faster. And so at the beginning, I was doing 6, maybe 7-hour marathons a day. At the end, I'm running 5-hour marathons every day, 5.5-hour marathons. And it was easy. So I'm running a 9-minute pace, better than a 9-minute pace. And it was just, I mean, it was work, of course, but it wasn't a big deal.
Absolutely.
And then cognitively, my brain, when I got done with it, I was dopey for weeks. Like I was literally, when I stopped running, and the adrenaline, the endorphins, and all of those chemicals going through your body, when they stopped, my brain got super stupid forgetful. And it was a weird thing because when I came back, I was with my kids and my wife at the time, and we would do all these things. And later on we were talking, about the memories and stuff. And she's like, do you remember when we did this? I'm like, what? So I like,
Really?
there's like sections of my life that are totally blacked out in the weeks after I came back.
Yeah, because I guess you probably went in some sort of pretty significant endorphin dump every day.
Every day.
At some point.
You literally feel like Superman from the endorphins and the adrenaline and all of the other things your body creates when you're exercising like that. And then on top of that, I'm on stage every morning. So that's a different sort of endorphin. And so you have the 2 of them. And so, yeah, I was just the best drugs you could get in the world, all natural.
No kidding. Wow, that is so cool. So what an interesting way. So you get through this entire process. Obviously, it brought you some notoriety, and then your skills of speaking obviously increased, as your friend said, greatly. So then where do we go from there? So you've done this. This was a major event. So you didn't just plan this overnight. Like you said, it took you a year.
Yeah, it took that whole year was just a fully dedicated to get it to doing this, to getting it ready, getting the team ready, and making it all happen, and still trying to keep my business running as I'm doing it as well, which this was just sort of adding like gasoline to the direction I was going in. And that was the part of the reason was to get the notoriety, to get the speaking events. But the funny thing is that I thought after I finished this, and I had been on the news so many times all over the country that, people would be banging down on my door to get me to speak for them.
Absolutely. That's what I would have thought.
I got absolutely zero speaking engagements from the run itself. Absolutely zero. Where the speaking engagements came in later on, what I didn't realize, because I didn't know anything about marketing back then, is that while I was on the news and everything, that's still not enough to get people to hire you. So I had to realize that I had to start marketing, and I ended up getting on two different TED stages. So TEDx stages, which
Okay,
is
yeah, I saw
technology,
that.
entertainment, and design. So if you don't know what it is, once I got on that stage and Google picked me up on that, and I got nearly 1 million views on that, that's when the calls started going in. And people would just call me up and say, "Hey, we got a gig. Are you available this date? And here's the money." And it was big, big money. The first time was 2,500. Next time was 10 grand, and the numbers just kept going up. And then the pandemic happened, and that all fell right through the floor.
Okay, well, that's a good place. We're going to stop for a quick pause. Okay, so now we're back on the Born or Made podcast. And so pandemic comes, nobody sees it. You've got this business that's doing well. What happens? The phone calls stop.
Before the pandemic, I had started transitioning my business into products and selling online. So I was already moving in that direction, although I wasn't very far yet. So that helped out a lot. And then I partnered up with a guy, and we started selling products together. And that we did very well together for a long time. We eventually split up and just went our own directions. But that was that. My big regret from that, though, is during the pandemic, I could have made my business go 10x easily, maybe 100x. But like most people, I got caught up in the whole pandemic thing. Is this real? Is this fake? Staying away from family, all that garbage that we went through. And I was so distracted by the junk going on in the world, not the thing itself, but all the distractions around it, the politics, that I lost sight of the ball. And so my business took a little bit of a dive from that, where it could have been going way, way up. Wasn't nearly as good as it could have been. So I've learned since then is, how do you, like, when the world's going crazy, like right now we're in the election, new president's coming in, everybody loves or hates him, whatever's going on. It's like, don't focus on that. Focus on what you can do right now to ride the wave, whatever wave is coming. So, ride that wave and make your life better. And so that's what I'm looking at now. How do I use this political transition and make things work? Because things are changing now, and they're going to change. And some are for the better, some are for the worse. And if you're not prepared for it, then you're going to be left behind like I was.
So, Croy, let me ask you a business question. So I hear what you're saying, and I totally agree with it. Do you have the capacity to maintain that focus, or do you hire people to help you maintain that focus?
I have learned to maintain that focus, and that's what my main thing is now. I have a program called Unstoppable Morning, and I have an Unstoppable Journal. They go together. They're both free. And what that does is it teaches you how to have that focus. First, you got to get clarity. If you're not clear on what you want, the direction you want to go in, the things you want to accomplish, you're going to be distracted by anything and everything. So the first thing is you got to get clear. Then you got to have a morning routine that sets you up to win. And then you got to have your goals set for the day. And then you've got to have a way to realize if you won or if you lost the day. And if you just keep repeating that process, you're going to win over time, because you're going to be dialed into what you want, to what you want to get, and whether you're getting it or not. And that's really what success is. Failure is bad actions repeated day after day. Success is good actions towards a worthy goal repeated day after day. And that's all it takes. But most people don't do either one of those. They don't have a morning routine. They don't check in at the end of the day. They don't even set their goals. Most people don't set goals. And this was what I've learned through all of my life. And I've got distracted a couple of times, like the pandemic's a great example. And there's been a couple of others, of course. And so I've learned from those lessons. So now it's I can't say it's easy, because I'm a very creative, entrepreneurial type person. So I'm easily distracted. I have a million ideas every single day. So to keep me on gear is hard. And that's why I created the Unstoppable Journal, is to keep me going every day on target in the direction that I need to. It was the only way I could fix myself. And now I share it with other people.
So, Croy, where do we find that online at? What's the domain for the
UnsstoppableMorning.com.
So, okay, unstoppablemorning.com.
And from there, you can get the journal, and they're both free. You can download them, the videos, the whole thing. It's all my gift to help other people.
So I'm a routine guy from, I guess I've been that way my whole life, but I'm very regimented in my morning. Do you have, like mine is, I get up in the morning, I kind of follow through my process. I go turn my sauna on, I work out, I do all these series of things, and I do it every day, 7 days a week. Do you kind of gear it more towards that, or do you have like a quiet time do you recommend? I mean, do you have like a prerequisite, or do you just say kind of figure out what yours is I guess what I'm asking.
No, I have a preset plan that I suggest that you follow for at least 60 days. And then from there, you can adjust if you need to. But for the first 60 days, it's 20 minutes of exercise in the morning. Whatever you like to do, you can do. I mix mine up. I do cardio most days, and I do gym on the other day. So strength training. So at a minimum, I'm doing cardio one day, gym the other day. Sometimes I'm combining both. And if I'm training for something, of course that goes up. And then there's quiet time. It's figuring out what your goals are, and journaling. The idea of journaling is to let go of the things that are bothering you, because we all have this garbage in our life, just let go of the mind trash, and then clear your mind out and get clarity on what you want for the rest of the day. And then there's a little bit of mindfulness to be able to get your mental strength and get alignment to your goals. Because without aligning your mind and your emotions towards your goals, it's way harder to achieve them. But if you have a plan, you have clarity, and you align your mind and emotions, it makes it a whole lot easier. And that's it. That's the whole morning, 45 minutes.
Do you have in yours, what was it, the domain again? Morning, I wrote it down. Unstoppablemorning.com. So do you have a journal in there? Something that shows a person how to journal? I'm asking that because me, that's all the stuff you said I do, but I struggle journaling. And I have so many friends that do it, or not. I have friends that do it, and it's life altering.
I've on and off, I've kind of always done journaling since I've left carpentry. I never really did it consistently or anything, but then as I went through a couple of, I don't know if you want to call them tragedies, but really difficult times in my life, one of my friends turned me on to, go into the journal, because I got tired of hearing me complain and moan and groan. So one of my friends told me, go write down everything that you're frustrated about, you're pissed off about, everything that's made you angry. And then at the end of it, then find gratitude and write down anything you have that you're grateful for out of that, any lessons you might have. And I wrote at the beginning of that, it was literally for like an hour and a half a day. And that went on for a couple of weeks, and then it was a little bit less and a little bit less. And so that became my therapy. It was from that experience that I realized how important journaling is. So I do that almost every day now. I skip days every once in a while, but generally speaking, I do it every day. And so the idea of that is that I just write to get rid of stuff, whatever's on my mind, just a few minutes, 5 minutes of just writing whatever's on my mind to get rid of it, good, bad, it doesn't matter. Then the next thing is to get clarity of like, what do I want? And then to actually set the goals after that. And you do those three things, and that makes it's so much easier, and it becomes a therapy. So you actually start craving. So I sit down at my desk every morning. First thing I do is I start writing, and it takes me 15 minutes, no big deal. And then I'm done, and I'm so much better for it. And so that's why I do it. And that's why I recommend at least 60 days before you make an alteration, because then, everybody's got a different life. And if you want to change it, then, of course, go change things.
Yeah, so one of the things that I struggle with in anything I do like that is that I think I overthink it. Like you were just talking about, like if I wake up one day and I'm just mad about something, I always like, well, that's kind of silly. But really, you should write down everything, right? I mean, no matter how small or how big it is.
It's sort of like going to a therapist in a way, or a psychologist. But you're becoming your own psychologist, your own therapy, and you're only doing it for a couple minutes, and you're just writing out your thoughts for the day, anything that makes you angry or upset, anything that makes you happy. And then that too. So you're doing both. And then it's like, what have you been doing well and what hasn't been going well? So this is why I gave up the news. I don't watch news. I don't read the news. I don't do anything anymore. And the reason for that is because every day I was writing down for a while because I spent too much time reading the news. This is making me angry. Whatever was going on, this is a while ago. I was like, whatever was going on, I was like, okay, what if I just stopped watching the news? What if I stopped reading the news? And so I stopped altogether. And it's been the best therapy I've ever done, is just not being tapped into the garbage that's out there, because everything is manipulated, whether it's the left, whether it's the right, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
To get you to watch. And so why let that toxicity into your mind, into your heart, into your emotions?
I quit doing that. I guess it's probably been, about 90 days ago. And it's amazing. The sun still comes up and goes down every day. And I literally, my stress level has dropped a ton just because of not getting tied into all this stuff. And there's nothing you can do about most of it anyway. You get your one vote of the year, and other than that, they don't listen to you anyway.
No. And you can't, unless you're going to run for politics, there's really nothing you can do. So why let that bother you and upset you and derail you? And it literally is making society broke because everybody's distracted. So they're not focused on what they should be focused on. They're focused on the garbage, the manipulation news. I didn't even know who won this election until the next day. I wasn't tapped into the news, so I had absolutely no idea.
No kidding. Well, congratulations. That's actually I think that's pretty darn good. Personally.
Now I'm working on getting off social media, anything that's not predetermined things for like marketing, just to not be on there and scrolling mindlessly. So that's what I'm working on now. That's actually harder than the news. I didn't think that was possible, but man, is social media an addiction.
Okay, well, that's a good place. We're going to stop for a quick pause. Yeah, mine is Instagram. I watch it all the time because I'm on there now trying to build my own platform. And you get sucked right in it. And you can lose 20 minutes very quickly.
You could lose. I used to lose an hour with no problem. You get in and then you just start scrolling and that's it. And TikTok is the worst. And Instagram's pretty aggressive as well. And or it could be TikTok. You get onto Twitter or whatever. And so when I'm on social media, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
When I'm on social media now, I block everything I don't want to see. So when we were going through all of that stuff last year with the boys in the bathroom and all that crap, when we were on that, anything that came up that was political or related to that in any way, I blocked it. And so it was a pain. Every time I'm going on social media, I got to block all these things, but the algorithm eventually learned, don't show me that. And so I didn't see that again. And then it was with politics. So when I was on Twitter, I had to block anything political on Twitter because Twitter's only politics almost. And so I had to block everything. So now when I go on social media, I don't see any of those things that would piss me off and make me angry and upset.
Well, all I can say is I watch a lot of stuff that's funny. And there's stuff on social media or Instagram that literally will just make your gut hurt. They're so funny.
I like watching the comedians too. There's that one young guy that's on stage. I forget his name offhand, but he's absolutely genius at comedy. But if you watch it, like each one of those videos are like 8 minutes or something. It only takes a handful of those and you.
Yeah. That's so funny. So back to you. So we get into COVID, you do some marketing stuff. Now you've separated. You're not doing that with the one partner. So where are you going now? What are we doing from there? This was what, 22?
22?
I know 2022. Is that when you had kind of got out? Sorry.
Yeah, I was in and out of the business with him for a while. We were kind of moving apart and then we got out. So I've been out on my own for about 18 months now, I guess. And I'm learning how to do all the things that my partner used to do, which was, difficult. It's not that it's difficult. It's just not the things I really, really like. So I'm still struggling with that a little bit. But what I'm trying to do now is that there's a few guys out there that I'm modeling that they're making $3, $4, $5 million a year, have 85 to 90% profit margins, and they're a one-person business or one person and a VA, a virtual assistant. And so that's where I'm bringing my business to, except I'm going to need more than a VA. I'm going to need somebody to edit my videos. So I'm going to need a videographer, editor, and then a VA. And that's what I'm looking to build my business as now, which means, social media and learning how to do social media in the right way that actually gets traction rather than just publishing stuff every day into the abyss. How do you publish so it actually gets noticed? So that's what I'm working on now because I want to create a business like that. How nice would life be if you're making $2 million a year, 90% profit, and you've only got one or two people you got to worry about?
Have you read The 4-Hour Work Week?
That was one of the things that changed the direction from carpentry.
So I read that. I tried to read it. I read most of it. There's a lot of things I can't do in there. I don't think as of yet. But like turning off all your indicators and notifications for your emails and only look, I'm telling you what, that stuff works. And that guy.
The only notifications I get now are my private messages, and that's it.
Really?
And that's only my direct stuff. So my WhatsApp and my text messaging and my Facebook Messenger. I don't get any other notifications. Those are the only ones.
And the rest you do based on your timeline of when you decide you're going to do it. Yeah.
When I log into my computer, when it works, I like to do that stuff in the afternoon because my morning is my most creative, get my stuff done. And then in the afternoon, I'll check it or not. I'm terrible at email. You send me an email, I'm going to be weeks to get back to you. I hate email.
Yeah, I'm pretty good on mine. Now, mine are sometimes not the most punctual or not punctual. If you send me an email and ask me a yes or no question, I respond yes or no. And a lot of people get thrown off by that. I don't have the ability to send out, 2-paragraph emails. So mine are always very quick and efficient tend to be the way I do them. So you build this business, you're trying to build this business. This is interesting to me, listening to that. And so are you going to do this? What are you going to primarily focus on? Are you going to be like health and nutrition? You're going to be the mental toughness? What are you going to pivot towards to get to that marketing like that? Or what are you going to be marketing?
It's still going to stay mental toughness, and new books will come out, and it's all going to still be aligned. It's just the structure of the business that I'm starting to change now, so that I don't have to have a whole team, and I don't have to do all these crazy things that we used to do, just a few years ago to make money. That was also very volatile. I want to also even out the volatility, the ups and downs, because one month you could have a huge month, and the next month it's a quarter of what it was. And if you don't financially plan for that, you can get in hot water pretty quick.
I like carpentry. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely. So will you still try to continue to do public speaking?
Not like I was before, speaking for corporations. It's most of my stuff I'm creating online now. And then when I get to a big enough point again, like I was at before, when I get to a big enough point again, I will take selected places, but I'm not doing it just for the money or the paycheck or to the corporations. The corporation's got to be aligned with me, and it's got to be an aligned message, and we got to have that kind of connection. Because when I spoke to corporations that I wasn't in alignment with, then it was never fun for me. It was nice getting that huge paycheck for an hour talk.
Yeah.
But getting off stage, nobody cared if you were there other than the bosses. And a couple of people would come up and they were interested. They were either marathoners or something else. But I'm up there speaking, and I'm between them and drinks or the lunch or dinner or whatever I'm in front of, and they just want to get to whatever's next.
Yeah, we're this way when you're doing it. Like, let's say, just because that's what you had brought up, like if you're talking to a group about mental toughness and marathoners, you want to be in a room with 1,000 marathoners, not 10.
Yeah.
I mean,
people who are aligned to that message in some way in general. Like I spoke for World's Gym, and that was a fantastic group to speak to. It was 220, I think it was 220 of their not managers, but I don't remember if it was managers, whoever runs each individual gym. And so they were all there, and I think we're on Marco Island, Florida, if I remember right. And so they came there, and that was really cool because they're all entrepreneurs. And so that was a perfect alignment. I spoke with 𝗕cie𝗿𝘁𝘁, and generally speaking, most of the people in that office were very entrepreneurial. Like, it was all the top end managers. And that was a really cool thing. And I got $1,000 worth of swag. So that was always fun.
Wow, that is so cool. Well, that's interesting. So you really are taking time to evolve to this, going in this direction. How close do you think you are to getting it really fine tuned?
I think I probably got about another year and a half before I get it dialed into where I'm going. And then it'll go to a place where I'm actually enjoying it. With the pandemic and not being out there speaking as much like I was before, I've got really rusty. So I had to shake a lot of the rust off. So I'm actually creating a video almost every day to get that skill back, because it's a skill you lose. And it's like speaking another language. You don't speak that second language for 10 years. You're going to be a little rusty when you try to go to that country and speak that language. And so that's what happened with me. So now every day I'm fine tuning it and learning and getting better. And, getting my mind.
That is just like what you're doing. You're doing that like your 100 days. You're doing that, just videoing it, getting better, just honing your skill. That's what you're doing with the videos.
Not as strict as I have to do it every day, but I'm doing several a week, so that I should be doing it every day. I mean, that should be my goal, is to, I got to get one and I got to publish it and everything. And I'm moving towards that. But I just need an editor, and if I should hire an editor, and that would make it easier, because then I just got to sit down, record my video, and then let somebody else handle it from there.
Have you looked at the AI editors?
They're useful to an extent. I'm still doing it all myself and all manually, because I want to see what I'm doing well and what I'm not. That's how I got good at speaking before. is that I would videotape it, then I'd watch myself, and I hated watching myself, but I would watch myself and I would see where am I strong? Where am I, wandering? Where am I using too many ahs and ums? And what do I need to be more precise on? And so I would watch the videos, like much like Tiger Woods, he would have his swings videotaped, and they would go watch the videotape, and he would learn what he was doing wrong.
And so that helps you with the speaking then. So you actually, because you do the ahs and the ums, because I'm trying to learn this same skill, and you're watching those videos, and it does help you though. Because I'm like you, I don't even like listening to myself, much less see myself.
It's really the fastest way to get it done. So you kind of have to do it for a while. And then after a while, you won't have to anymore.
And then, are you going to continue to write more books?
Yes, there'll be more books in the future. I'm kind of dabbling in one now. I'm not spending a lot of focus on that because I'm working on other things. I want to start traveling more. But right now I'm staying still because I need to get the business to a certain level. Because once I start traveling, then it makes it so much harder to stay focused and get enough hours in during the day. So my goal is not only to make the income levels that we talked about, but also to do it in 4 to 5 hours a day. And when I can get that dialed in, then I'll be able to travel again the way I used to, so that I can enjoy life. Because I was traveling a lot for a bunch of years, like 7 years, I was nomadic. And it was the greatest thing in the world. I absolutely loved it. I was all over the place, except I wasn't getting much work done. And so I wasn't making a whole lot of money. So now I want to combine the two. How do I get the travel in that I love? How do I have the impact that I want to make? And then how do I make the money that I want to make? And combine those three and enjoy it while I'm doing it. How do I do it and love it all?
Well, based on what you're saying, I mean, and I'm not making light of this, you should be able to do that because you have the skill set to stay hyper-focused on those 4 or 5 hours a day. You just got to figure out how to do it in Colombia before you get to the beach, right? I mean, that's right? I mean, or wherever, having fun, you've got to do that first 4 or 5 hours. It seems like you're probably going to be able to do it. It's just a matter of how you work it out.
A couple of guys that I'm modeling from a distance. I don't know either one of them yet. They're both they're both $4 to $5 million. They did it in just a few short years. They made it happen, and neither one of them have a full team.
Can you say their names? Are you
𝗕cie 𝗕cie.
Okay.
And the other guy's name I don't remember offhand, but he's a LinkedIn expert.
All right.
If you said his name, I might remember, but
I'm not very good at names at all anyway, but I want to make sure and just kind of go learn a little bit about that, because it's all kind of the same thing I'm trying to achieve over time, because I'm 61. I kind of want to tell my story. Mine's kind of entrepreneurial based, similar to yours. And, it might work out in that same direction, because my ultimate goal is to be a public speaker. I really think that's what I want to do.
One of the reasons I like 𝗕cie as well is that his style of speaking is very different than most anybody else. It's a very dry, almost mechanical type speaking. And most anybody is better than him in terms of technique. And so if he can do it and not be like a Tony Robbins dynamic kind of speaker, or a Joe Rogan or whoever, if this guy can do it and have a very methodical, mechanical style of presentations, well, then anybody can do it. And if I went back, in fact, today, I went back and looked at his earliest videos that he still has public. I mean,
really?
And now he's really, really good, but he's still very mechanical. He's still very purposeful in everything that he says. And so it's interesting. And as compared to other guys that I like, that they're very dynamic and they're charismatic, and that's the style that I like. But I like Dan too, because he's so different, but he thinks differently than I do. And I love that, because he's so methodical in the way he thinks. And he shares the backstory to how he got to where he is.
So he's very open.
All the information you're looking for to go where you want to go, he's a great source for that.
Really? Huh. All right. Well, that's interesting. So you think you're another year out before you think you finally kind of have this honed in?
Year and a half till I get it honed in pretty good. I think it'll take me probably 3 years to get it dialed in to where I'm working 3 days a week and I'm making the kind of money I want to make.
So what are you doing right now to put food on the table?
I got products that I've made in the past, and kind of like a royalty in a sense. They just keep coming in. So whether I work or not, I got a base income.
Okay. Good for you.
So it's not a lot, but it's enough certainly for what I need. And then when I'm selling products or I get coaching or I'm, because I have personal coaching clients too. And those are just extra. So I have my base covered and then anything on top of that is extra. But I'm looking to really get to that point of that, the true wealth, $1 million plus net personal income after taxes. And every millionaire I know, if you talk to every millionaire that I know making over $1 million a year in personal income, they all say $1 million doesn't go as far as you think it does.
Yeah, but it sure sounds fun to try to find out. Right?
I want to be able to complain on my Cheerios. I want to cry in my Cheerios with that kind of money.
Yeah. I don't know. Okay. I'm with you. Like, it sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Okay. So $1 million, but is 2 million good? I mean, is that one better? Maybe that's what you need to ask them. Yeah, that's funny. Well, our time went fast and it's been what a great story. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. I always like to finish out by asking you the question of, do you think you were born or do you think you were made?
We are all made. It's absolutely is where we're made, because the things you do every day or you don't do every day is what determines who you are. So you have your genetics, you have the things you're born, the gifts you're born with, and we're all born with different gifts, but it's the persistence, the discipline, the follow through, the sticking it out when you don't want to stick it out. That's the difference between those who are successful and those who are not. When you're running across America, I am not a gifted runner at all. In any sense of the word, I am not a gifted runner. Fastest marathon I ever ran was 4.5 hours. That is not fast by marathon standards. I'm not gifted, but how many people can run a marathon a day? We all have different gifts and we all make ourselves.
Man, I would like that. That was pointed. I mean, you were definitely committed to that answer, and I like that. Yeah, that's great. Well, Croy, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for coming on the Born or Made podcast. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet.